My name is Dorian Basson, and I am 35 years old, born in Cape Town. I knew that I identified as a gay individual at the age of about 5. I knew something was different. But I think it was never necessary for me to really come out of the closet. I think it was in 2005 really that I openly had a discussion with my close family and said that I identified as a gay individual. After matriculating with matric in 2003, I applied and I started studying at UWC. And part of the orientation program, which was in 2004, early in 2004, was being educated about HIV and AIDS. Now I was, give or take, 19, and I was young, I was energetic, and the topic of HIV and AIDS didn't even cross my mind. It wasn't a thought that crossed my mind. And I remember sitting in those workshops with the peer educators and thinking, do I need to sit here for an hour and a half and listen to all of this? I was energetic, I was young. Life had just started really for me, and I had a new kind of freedom. And so contracting or being infected with HIV was the furthest thing from my mind. And, I wish that I had not been as ignorant way back when. Now, I would say to my younger self, pay attention to exactly what was said in that orientation program. And it was... I had just finished my first year at UWC. I had come out as one of the top students in the faculty. I was awarded the Golden Key International Honorary Society Award, which is awarded to students for outstanding academic scholarship. And I remember the excitement that went with that in April 2005 when it was the award ceremony. And just a few months later, in October 2005, I was walking home from university, and I stayed in Mitchell's Plain, and there's an area called Westgate, and I remember that I was walking, and there was a bushy area that I had to pass to get to my house. An undeveloped area, and it literally was about a kilometer away. It wasn't that far a walk for me at that time, and I still remember that I was singing. I had my earphones in and I was singing, and just a few meters, really, literally from my house, I was attacked from behind. I felt the force against my chest. And before I knew it, I'd been pulled into the bush by an unknown suspect and forced down onto the sand. What stands out for me today still is the knife that he had against my throat. And I was 20 at the time. As he pulled down my shorts, and just to put people in light of this was broad daylight. This was at about 4:00 the afternoon. It was light. It was October, so it was summer. And as he pulled down my pants, and he started, a term that many men don't like using, as he started raping me. I remember that I was eating the sand because of the pain. I'd not been sexually active before then. And as I was eating the sand, he kept on threatening me and said that he would slit my throat if I need to shout or scream or draw any attention to us as we laid in the bush. And I don't know how long it went on. All I know is that as I was eating the sand to kind of, take my mind off the pain, physical pain that I was going through, I prayed. I prayed and I begged God to spare my life. I begged God to spare my life, that I would see my mother again, that I would see my sister again, and that I would see my brother. Because, you normally hear and read of these stories, but when it happens to you, it changes your perspective. I did make it out alive. And I did get to see his face, but that very same night, as I walked home and I didn't have shoes on and my pants was torn and he had ripped my t-shirt off. I went to friends nearby and they knew immediately. They were a married couple, as they rallied around me and tried figuring out what had gone wrong, because I was obviously bruised from the way he had obviously hit me, and obviously laying in the bush, I had scratches all over my legs and my body, and they knew that I could not have been robbed, but I was not willing to say anything. At that stage I was too ashamed. I was in complete shock. I was in disbelief that something like that could have happened to me, that something was wrong. And I said to them, no, that I'd been robbed. And they gave me something to put on and they took me home and they tried to tell my mother that I was robbed. And then I blanked out. I had a mental breakdown that very same night. I had a mental breakdown. I woke up the next day in Lentegeur Psychiatric Hospital in the admissions ward, and I was locked up alone. And now, if you've ever been in a mental hospital, you would know that when you get admitted and you've had a mental breakdown of any sorts, you're locked up in a ward alone, with a iron cast door, and there's I found myself on a mattress with a government blue government blanket. And up until today, I hate blue blankets. I hate blue blankets for that very, very reason, that it brings back that memory for me. When I reflect on on me waking up that morning, I was soiled. And I didn't understand what had happened. It was as though I had blanked out the sexual assault that had happened just a few hours earlier. And it was only afterwards that I came to know what had happened in those hours following the sexual assault. My mother worked at Lentegeur Psychiatric Hospital as a registered nurse. And so her specialization was psychiatry. And the minute that my friends had brought me in, she knew that mentally something was going on. I'd apparently, in that time, I'd burnt my hair. You see, now I don't have any more hair, but I'd burnt my hair. I had lit up candles in my room. I was frantically shouting. They had called in the priest to come anoint me. They had, people praying because they didn't know what was wrong. And it got to the point where my mother took the initiative, because she had been working all these years at the psychiatric hospital. She knew that I must have had a mental breakdown. And that really is how I landed up at the hospital. And I stayed there for 3 months, was it? And in the 3 months, I didn't say a single word. Psychiatrists, social workers, psychologists tried getting through to me, and I blamed the breakdown on the stress of not being able to deal with my sexuality. It was the easiest way out. I think that I was comfortable, but it wasn't something which I was open about. So the easiest way for me to hide the sexual assault was to throw my sexuality to the fore. It was the easiest way. In a way, it was the flip side of it was that for the 3 months that I went through therapy and assertive sessions, it helped me deal with my sexuality in such a good way, because it made me comfortable with who I am today. And had it not been for those 3 months, I probably would, have had more of a difficult time, I would say, dealing and coming out as a gay individual, as a gay man. But it really was a front that I'd put up. I kept silent about my sexual assault. I was too ashamed. I was too ashamed. I come from, my mother's she was a very proud woman. And if you, even up until today, if you go in at Lentige Hospital and you ask them who Dorian Basson is, they'll tell you. And I thought of the embarrassment which it would bring upon her. Firstly, the fact that I was there as a patient, but more the fact that, if it had come out that I was sexually assaulted, how would she be able to deal with that? She wasn't able to protect me. And those were really the thoughts that were going through my mind. I was trying to protect everybody else but me. Had I listened attentively to that orientation program, I would have known that something like PrEP was available. My 3 months at Lentige Psychiatric Hospital eventually became my biggest blessing, in that I was able to deal with so many things. I wasn't dealing directly with the sexual assault, but I was dealing with, I had issues with being assertive. I couldn't say no, even at that young age. Even in the 3 months, the many sessions with the psychologist, I had something which was at the very back of my mind, and that was the sexual assault, and no one knew about it. And I tried to commit suicide. I remember I'd gone home for the weekend, and it was in my last month there. I'd gone home for the weekend, and my mother's a nurse, and my brother as well. He worked at Grootskema. Obviously, our house was full of medication. It was full of pills. And the Sunday just before I was taken back to Lentige, I took all the pills that I possibly could with me. And I had just gotten back into the ward, and it was changeover of the nurses. And I went into the lounge area and I closed the door. And I remember that I started taking those pills, and I was crying. It was my last 2 weeks there. I had done brilliantly. They were happy with my progress, and I was ready to be discharged. And as I took those pills, the pain of that sexual assault started disappearing. In my mind, at least. I woke up at GF Jooster hospital in Manenberg. And it was the Monday. And I know my brother was standing over me and he was pumping charcoal into me as they were trying to obviously get rid of the toxins. And I had one of my best friends, Anthea, standing on my left-hand side, and she was busy praying. And I looked at her and I started crying, and she said, "You were almost gone. Had they gotten to you any later than they did, you would have been gone." That added another 2 months stay. So in total, I was at Linda here for 5 months, because then they tried getting to the bottom of why did he take the pills. We had helped him so well to deal with his sexuality, with his confidence levels, with his assertiveness. Why did he take the pills? And I didn't say a word. Did not say a word. I was academically excluded from UWC. I had missed my final exams at the end of 2005. I could not write exams at the beginning of 2006 because I was still in hospital and I was academically excluded from UWC. And I started working. I looked for a job and I started working. And I started work at a company called Fairheads Benefit Services. And I started in May. It was in May 2008 that I started at Fairheads Benefit Services. And when you've come from an absolutely low point in life and you start building yourself up again. That was me. I was soaring. I was soaring in terms of my work. I had come in as an assistant bookkeeper, and they were impressed. Started my part-time studies at UNISA, and things were going good until the 5th of December 2008. We had just come off World AIDS Day, and the office was buzzing about there was a program for World AIDS Day, and I remember sitting in my office corner, and it was unplanned. Now, when I say this, I was busy with whatever financials or work that I was doing. And it was like something popped into my head. And we had a work nurse, and I phoned down to her and I said, "Can I come down for an HIV test? The office is buzzing with HIV information, and I think just in solidarity, let me come for a test." And I remember her saying, "Yeah, that I should come down. She's free." I walked in, and she was the old nurse. She was elderly. I remember her saying, that she will have to give pre-counseling, and I very boldly declined it. I said to her, "Nope, I haven't done anything which could possibly get me infected. Nothing. So she can go straight ahead and do the test." I was bold about it because I had not done anything, in my mind at least. And she agreed. She went ahead and she did the test. That was the look on her face. I will never forget the look on her face. She looked at me and she said, "I think we need to do another one." And I knew. In that moment, I knew. And I said to her, "By all means, go ahead." As calm and as collective as ever. And she did the second rapid test, and she said to me, "Let me try a third test, from a different fracture. And I said to her, go ahead. And the third test was inconclusive. And she said, Dorian, I'm going to try a fourth test. I said to her, it's not necessary. What do I need to do now? And we literally sat in silence for 10 minutes because she was completely thrown. She was completely thrown, and I knew that she needed time to gather herself. I was calm. When I think of it, I can't believe I was that calm. And she set up an appointment for me at Christian Barnard Hospital for me to go for blood tests later that afternoon, and I left the office. And as I walked out, we had a stairway at work. And I went and I sat on that stairway and I burst out crying. I cannot tell you how long I was sitting there. I cried. I cried about the sexual assault. I cried because that was the only possibility. That was the only way that I could have been infected. I cried. For the longest time, I know that I got back to the office, the PA looked at me and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I need to take off for the rest of the day. And she says, but you've been gone for such a long time. And I said, I'll tell you again. And I literally packed up my bag and I went up to Christian Barnard for the blood test. Felt like forever. I think I came back within 24 hours, something like that. And it was confirmed that Dorian Basson, was HIV positive. I was referred to the HIV specialist. He became my best friend. He showed me the ropes. He put me on ARVs. He looked after my health. And had it not been for him, I would have been dead. Because to me, it was a death sentence. Rian had asked me a strange question. He said to me, do I have any idea how I got infected? And I said to him, no. I was still at that point too ashamed. I never did anything which could have resulted in me being infected. So I didn't use needles. I didn't do infection with sex more than anything else. And he said, okay, he did not force me, obviously, for he just said to me, think about it, because if you possibly could have infected, anyone else if you are sexually active, then you need to inform them. And I said to him, no, I have no one else to inform. After leaving Lentegeur Psychiatric Hospital for the second time, it was also the last time I thought of the sexual assault. I blocked it out completely, much to my detriment in later years. But the only other time I thought of the sexual assault was when I was sitting on the stairs, because then I was able to connect the dots as to how I got infected. And when I got up from those stairs, I blocked it out. Didn't think of it again, didn't mention it, nothing. It was as if it had never happened. For 2 years after Dr. Rian had placed me on ARVs, now my mom was a nurse, my brother was a nurse. Thank goodness my sister was in the insurance field. But I obviously did not say anything. And so I started taking ARVs in December 2008 in silence. As in, literally, I remember walking out and saying to myself, how am I going to hide pills if they need to be in the fridge? I can't put them in the fridge because obviously my mother will know what they are. And so, I made my little cooler box, lunch box, my best friend. And so I would literally, at night when everyone was asleep, I would go to the freezer and I would take an ice pack out and I would put it in the cooler box. And obviously my meds would then be kept cold. And I, would then repeat that in the morning. And when I got to work, it was easy for me just to put my lunchbox in to the fridge with my lunch on top and my medication at the bottom, and no one knew. And that is how I took ARVs in silence for 2 years after that. I not told a soul. It was sometime in 2010, and I had another mental breakdown. And then I the minute it happened, with the first mental breakdown, that immediately diagnosed me with bipolar mood disorder and placed me on lithium. And so somehow I just knew what the triggers were, and I could feel that I was going into a manic episode, but it was because I was carrying so much with me. I had all of this heavy burden on my shoulders, and no one knew. And when you have to live in silence, when you don't disclose, it leaves a heavy burden with you. Leaves a heavy burden, and I don't remember much of my second mental breakdown. What I do, however, remember is that I was taken to Grootskea Hospital, and they had a psychiatric ward there, and I ended up there, and again, the psychiatrists, psychologists, social work, they were baffled. They tried to trace the history back to 2005, and they could not connect the dots. You know what the sad part is I've obviously over the years I've journeyed with a lot of people from the LGBTI community, but specifically the males, and a large percentage of them have actually either been sexually assaulted by the father, the uncle, and it is that shame. There's that something which prevents them from speaking out. And I, part of my counseling, the counselor said to me, "Go make a case." I said, "What? It's like 8, 9, 10 years later. You're telling me to go make it?" She said, "Go make a case. Your voice needs to be heard, because that is part of setting you free as well." And it's sad that we don't, that it's not highlighted enough, and that men feel that there's not a safe enough space for them to actually speak out about it. The advice, if I think of myself at the age of 20 when I was sexually assaulted, the advice that I would give someone who has been sexually assaulted is to, first of all, get the necessary medical assistance immediately. We tend to neglect, that there are various parts of medical assistance that we need. There's the emotional part that needs to be dealt with. But there's the more important physical part which needs to be dealt with. And if there is time, that person gets assistance in the form of PEP, that they are immediately, seen to by a medical doctor or medical staff member that is able to start them with PEP treatment. I think that, had I known about PEP, my diagnosis and HIV status could possibly have been prevented. But 15 years later, here I am, and I think it is important that we acknowledge the medical advancement and that people know that PEP is available. If you have been sexually assaulted, if you have been violated against your will, know that there is medical assistance that you can get that will prevent or assist from you being infected with HIV. Being sexually assaulted, and then subsequently 2 years later being diagnosed HIV positive. Those two events in my life came with a lot of shame. It came with a lot of guilt. Parts of me blamed myself. And there really is no easy way to deal with guilt than digging deep inside yourself. Don't mentally block out the events, especially the sexual assault, and seek medical assistance as soon as possible. Dealing with shame is never easy. I think for me, there are two things which stand out. The first thing is that I learned that I needed to start loving myself. And by doing that, I needed to forgive my perpetrator more than anything else, even though I'd never met him again. I needed to forgive him. So that was the one part. And the second part is surround yourself with people that will love you unconditionally, regardless of your status. If you follow me on social media, you will know that I have a hashtag which has gone viral. It's called Love Beyond. And it really speaks to the saving love which saved me after my sexual assault and diagnosis. I went into a very deep space. And it was the love of people that would not give up on me that brought me through. And so I now look at love as being beyond. I look at a love beyond HIV and AIDS. Being sexually assaulted or being diagnosed HIV positive are not easy events that happen to us as human beings. What I can say to especially those that have had to go through sexual assault, you are not alone. Get medical help as soon as possible. Make sure that you are if you have been sexually assaulted or you have been diagnosed with HIV, I would like you to know that you're not alone. You have so much more to you than those parts of you. I call them my little labels, and they're only a small part of who I am. There's something which I firmly believe in, and that is called love beyond. And it's the love that we receive from ourselves and from those individuals who never fail to give up on us. And I share my journey with all of you in the hope that you will know that my love beyond will go with you and that things will be okay. Just remember to take it one day at a time.